right? It has flown by far too fast. So today's seminar is, you can see, on wild herb poultices, baths, and salves. And so I do have handouts again, so if there's 2 volunteers that would be willing to pass those out to everyone here, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I got someone else coming there. Thank you. And then bring the leftovers up front, please. So there's 5 herbs that we're going to be talking about today. And they're ones that I picked because they're ones that each one of them will help several different issues. And they are commonly found in the wild across the U.S. And I wanted that on purpose because I didn't want to have herbs that are hard to find. And for the days when we can't get things so easily, ordering them online or going to the stores for them, when things get a little harder, we can go out in the backyard or out in the back fields, and if we know how to identify these, we've got our pharmacy right out there. And a lot of these are seen as weeds, but you don't know what medicinal value a lot of plants have. Once you realize what they are and what they can do, you won't see them as weeds anymore. And you're like, oh, I don't want to cut that. That can do so many good things for me. All right, so if we can get the PowerPoint up, there we go. Our wild herb poultices, salves, and baths. So I'm going to go over each of the 5 herbs first, and then I'm going to show you how to make an herbal poultice, how to prepare for an herbal bath, and how to make herbal salves, okay? All right, so again, I'm not a doctor or nurse. I'm a massage therapist, and I talk on natural remedies, so I can't diagnose your symptoms, okay? So this quote, I love this quote as well, from Medical Ministry, and it says, God has caused to grow out of the ground herbs for the use of man. And if we understand the nature of these roots and herbs and make a right use of them, there would not be a necessity of running for the doctor so frequently. Not that we don't need doctors at all, right? But not so frequently. And people would be in much better health than they are today. And think about, that was said a long time ago. What would she say today? And they used to use herbs even more back then than we do now. But it's there are people out there trying to make a comeback in the knowledge of herbs. Herbs really are God's pharmacy. Plants, herbs, all the things that the poultices I did yesterday, all part of God's pharmacy. And so today we're going to be talking about chickweed, comfrey, mullein, plantain, not the banana, the herb, or the banana looking like thing, not those plantains, but the herb, and yarrow, okay? And I'm not only going to go over what things these herbs help, but I'm also going to teach you how to identify them from their poisonous look-alike. Very important if you're going to go hunting for these out in the fields, okay? Because they do have poisonous look-alikes. Some are mildly toxic and others are deadly. So you need to know what you're looking for, okay? So, poultices, baths, and salves, as I mentioned, we're going to go over all 3 of these. We're going to start with chickweed. And like I said, each one of these has a list of things that they help. So I'm not going to dive deeply into each one of these, but chickweed is useful for abscesses, for rheumatic arthritis. It's an astringent, so if you want to tighten up the skin. It helps with benign cysts and boils. Remember, there was a couple other things yesterday that helped with boils. Do people that were here yesterday remember what those 2 were? Onions and potatoes. Yes, I heard both of those. Very good. Onion and potato poultice. Chickweed also helps with dermatitis and with drawing out splinters and insect stingers. Something else drew out splinters that we talked about yesterday? Potato, yep, someone remembered. Exactly. Chickweed also helps eczema, eye irritations and infections, hives, itching, nerve pain of surface nerves, shingles, skin burns and rashes, swollen lymph nodes, varicose veins, and wounds. So it's a pretty medicinal herb. And how many of you know what chickweed looks like? I saw one hand and another sort of hand. Okay, well, very good. I didn't know what it looked like before I learned about it, but its poisonous look-alike is, well, before I go on to that, I'm going to explain your handout now that you all have it. Okay, so there's a lot of information on these 6 pages, and what I have for each herb is 1 page each. And of course you have the common name at the top and then its scientific name, and then when the best time is to harvest it. So chickweed is best harvested in spring, in the early morning or late evening, and you can use it fresh or dried, okay? And that's the only time you do see it is in the early spring because it quickly wilts away. And so you have to get it when you see it. And then it has all the external uses. That's what same things that are listed there on the slide. And then there's other resources. So that is either videos or articles that you can read to learn more about it. And then for each one, it lists for the bath, the poultice, and the salve, whether there's some extra instructions there or to look on page 6 on the back where we are going to be going over pretty soon. And then the warning down there of its poisonous look-alike with a written description of what to look for, but I'm going to do it verbally and visually with pictures with you now. And then each one has 3 links at the bottom for visual help with identifying it and identifying against the poisonous look-alikes as well. So if you forget all about what I taught you here, you've got those links and you can go to those and refresh your memory on that, okay? So that's what each one has. And then on the back is the instructions for the baths and the salves, okay? So, chickweed's poisonous look-alike is scarlet pimpernel. Now, scarlet pimpernel is toxic in large quantities. If you get a little bit of it, it's not so bad. But in large quantities, you don't want to get that. So if there is no flower on either one of these yet, and it's just the leaves, can you tell me which one is which just by looking at those? One's chickweed and one is scarlet pimpernel. They look pretty much alike, don't they? Yeah, all right, so the way that you can tell chickweed is, one thing is you can see that broken stem there and it has a cord inside. If you gently break the stem, it'll have a stretchy elastic cord in the center of it. Scarlet pimpernel does not. And also the stem has one single line of very fine hairs. And at each leaf node, that line of hairs shifts a quarter turn. And then it has another line of fine hairs. And then at the next leaf node, it shifts a quarter turn and has another fine line of hairs. And scarlet pimpernel does not have hairs on its stem at all. And then, of course, when the flowers come out, you can obviously tell because the chickweed flowers are these tiny, tiny white flowers, and they have 5 petals. Do you believe me? No, nobody believes me. Actually, it's true. They have 5 petals, but each petal is very deeply clefted in the middle, and it makes each petal look like it's 2. But it's one center at the base. Okay? So it's got 5 deeply clefted petals that make it look like 10, and it's white. Scarlet pimpernel flowers are more on the scarlet side, hence the name. So when the flowers are out, you can obviously tell the difference. But when there's no flowers, you can tell by the stem of the chickweed, and it's round. The stem is round and has that one single line of fine hairs. Whereas on scarlet pimpernel, the stem is more squared. So if you look straight down at it, it kind of looks like a square, and it has no hair. And then, as you can see, the flowers, obviously, a different color and a different look. But underneath the leaf has these little black dots. And you see that? Chickweed doesn't have that. So if there is just the leaves, look at the stems. Is it round with that single line of fine hairs? Or is it square with no hairs and black dots under the leaves? That'll tell you whether it's chickweed or scarlet pimpernel, okay? And also that stretchy cord inside the stem of the chickweed. So that's pretty simple to identify, and it's not poisonous to touch the scarlet pimpernel, so you can, get a leaf and look underneath there and find if it has those dots, okay? So our next one is comfrey. I love comfrey, and actually we use a lot of comfrey at the Lifestyle Center. I used to, when I worked there, I made comfrey salve, and then we would sell it to the guests that would come. Of course, we would use it on them in their treatments, and if they wanted jars of it, then we would sell it to them. And it's very, very useful in either of the poultice, bath, or salve version of it. So comfrey is, before I talk a little more about it, we'll just go over the list of things that it helps there. It is antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. It's used for arthritis, back pain, broken, fractured bones. Actually, you can see on the top there under comfrey, it's also known as bone set and knit bone because it is used to heal bone. And that's because it contains allantoin, which generates new cell growth. And so it's not only useful for fractured or broken bones, it's also for tendons and ligaments as well. So that allantoin is very powerful. That's one of the most powerful healing aspects about the comfrey, is that allantoin. It also has rosmarinic acid, and that's anti-inflammatory. So it's excellent for sprains and strains and acute injuries and things like that. Anyways, back to the list. I'm getting ahead of myself. Where was I? Broken, fractured bones, bruises, burns. It decreases pain and swelling in joint and muscles, again, because of rosmarinic acid. It's good for eczema, gout, ligament and tendon injuries, psoriasis, rashes, sprains and strains, ulcers, varicose veins, and wounds, but only when no infection is present. You cannot put comfrey on an infected wound, and you can't put it on a deep wound. Because of that allantoin, it is so powerful in healing things that if you put comfrey on over infection or over a deep wound, then the skin is going to heal over that deep wound and seal it up, and it needs to heal from the inside out. So you don't want the skin covering over before the inside is healed, okay? So just be mindful of that. Another thing for the bruises back there, I remember one time when one of my coworkers, another therapist, one of her clients had been walking in the lobby, and she was near the piano, and she misgauged where the piano bench was, and for some reason she was just taking a full stride quickly, and her knee just slammed right into that piano bench. And of course she was instantly in pain. Well, my coworker, her therapist, made a comfrey poultice real quick and wrapped that on her, and she wore that, I think, the rest of the day, at least several hours. The next day, her knee, no problem, no bruise, no pain. She was as good as new. And so Comfrey is excellent for those bruising injuries as well. So, you got your other things there. This is on the Comfrey page, I have the instructions for making a basic poultice, herbal poultice, and we'll get back to that when we start talking about it. But for now, we're going to skip that part and come back to it later. So how to identify comfrey from its poisonous look-alike? Does anyone have a guess what its poisonous look-alike is? No, it is foxglove. All right, so foxglove is used in certain drug medications that's made today, actually, because it has a particular effect on the heart. But if you don't have the particular conditions that need that, it's going to affect your heart negatively, okay? So can you tell me which one is comfrey and which one is foxglove? Does anybody know? There's some guesses. All right, so who says that comfrey is on the right? Couple hands. Who says it's on the left? Okay, more hands for that. And who just has no idea? Quite a few hands for that. All right, so those that said it's on the left, you are correct. Comfrey is on the left. So one of the identifying factors of the leaves is that comfrey has smoother edges, and foxglove has little toothed edges around the leaf, if you can see that. Now I know some of these might be a little far away for you to see, so if you want afterwards, I do have these pictures printed out if you want to look at them a little more closely for each one. Each one is double-sided with the herb and then the poisonous look-alike. Okay, so feel free to come up. So the little teeth there on the edges of the leaves, that is the foxglove. So I remember that as, if it's got teeth, it's going to bite you, right? You can just remember that. You want those smooth edges. And then also comfrey has stiff hairs, and foxglove has softer hairs. But they both have hairs, and so if you don't have them growing next to each other, you can't really tell by that per se. You want to know the teeth there, or the smooth edges, and the flowers. So the flowers look different as well. Come on, did that not go? Yeah, it's not working. There we go. Okay. So, which one are comfrey flowers and which one are foxglove flowers? All right, so I hear a lot of people talking. The comfrey flowers are on the left. So they're the ones, they grow in clumps, and foxglove flowers grow on a tall stalk, center stalk, okay? And they can be different colors than pink. They both come in different colors. Comfrey has different colors, foxglove have different colors, but they both have common colors, as you can see. So the comfrey ones are in a clump, and they have like a little poof to it, like a skirt, if you think of that. Whereas the foxglove flowers growing up on the tall stalk are just dropping down off that stem like bells dropping down, okay? So, and you can tell by the leaf and by the flowers. The comfrey does not have that one single tall stalk growing up out of it either. So when they're blooming, they're easy to tell apart. But when they're not blooming, they're not as easy because they're both a rosette leaf pattern before they get their flowers, okay? So there we go. You've got the comfrey together and you've got the foxglove together. The leaves and the flowers. You feel confident that you could identify those if you saw them in the wild? That's why I've got all those resources on your handout where you can go and look at other videos and read other articles and see more pictures and stuff so that you can get more comfortable with it. Okay? And sometimes it's nice when you can see them side by side to feel them. Foxglove isn't poisonous to touch, it's just you don't want to ingest it. Okay, so you can feel it, you can feel the leaves, you can feel the difference in the hairiness and the textures and everything. So the comfrey is something that grows well in the wild. You don't have to try to encourage it. If you dig up something and find it in the wild, and you dig up that comfrey plant and plant it in your garden, I would suggest that you plant it in something that will contain it, because otherwise it will just keep spreading in your garden and become a little invasive. If you want a whole bunch of it, then go for it, but just be aware of that, okay? And there was one man who went out in the woods and he dug up 3 comfrey plants and he brought them home and planted all 3 of them in his garden. And then when they flowered, he found out that one of them was foxglove. He didn't know how to tell the difference between them, and so he'd gotten 2 comfreys and 1 foxglove. So that was his learning experience. All right, so we're going to go on to mullein. Mullein is another one that has a rosette base when it's young, and then it has a single stalk there. But mullein is used for, again, a number of things. And that is, it's antibacterial, especially the flowers, anti-inflammatory, antiseptic, antispasmodic, antiviral. It's just anti. It's against a lot of stuff, okay? You can also use it as an astringent. It's good for burns, bursitis, as a disinfectant. It also draws out splinters. So you could mix some mullein in with your potatoes, right? Or something like that, and with your chickweed, and you'll get even more of a drawing effect. It's good for earaches and ear infections if you infuse the flowers into oil and then use that oil as drops in your ears. Eczema and gout. It helps with stimulating hair growth, using it on the scalp. It's good for hemorrhoids, inflamed eyelids, insect bites, muscle cramps and spasms, skin abrasions, sunburns. You can use it as toilet paper. It's called the camper's toilet paper. Have any of you ever heard of using mullein leaves as toilet paper if you're in an emergency out camping? Nobody has. Okay, well that's because it's very, very soft leaf with very fine hairs, and so it makes a comfortable toilet paper. But there is something to know about it. That is, once you break that leaf off, and the broader the better, of course, right? So you get some surface to it, so closer to the base. When you break that leaf off, you have the 2 ends. You have the broken end that you just snapped off the plant, and then you have the tip. So you want to always wipe yourself with the tip, okay? Because like I said, all those fine little hairs, when you break that off the plant, that can release some of those fine hairs. And need I say any more? Yes. So it's also good for tumors, ulcers, warts, using the root powder, and for wounds. So mullein, again, it's one of those that just has a lot of good uses. Now for the earaches and ear infections, if you see on your handout there, it says if the eardrum is not perforated, okay? So don't be putting that infused oil into an infected ear if the eardrum's perforated, all right? So mullein has a poisonous look-alike, of course, and that is foxglove. It looks like mullein as well. So foxglove, comfrey, and mullein all look very similar. Can you tell which one is which now that you know how to identify foxglove from the last time? Which one is on top? Excellent. See, you're such good students. You know how to identify these things. The top is foxglove, the bottom is mullein. So you can see the difference there in the leaves. Obviously, again, the foxglove has those toothed edges to it, and it has much more of a leathery look and feel to the leaf, whereas the mullein is more rounded, not always completely rounded, but more rounded on the foxglove is a little more on the tips, and mullein is more hairy, soft and hairy, and a little more silvery. But again, if you don't have them next to each other, you need to know how to identify them without the other one there to compare them to, right? Okay, so if you can't properly identify it, then it's just safer to wait until the flowers appear. Now, both of these have that tall center stalk, but thankfully, their flowers are very different. They can be the same color or different colors. You know, foxglove can have a lot of different colors, but again, it's those drop-down bells on that tall stem or stalk. Whereas mullein has these little tiny yellow flowers that pop out a lot of times just from a top section of that tall stalk, but they're just little tiny yellow flowers. Okay, they don't have those dropping down bells. So when they bloom, you can know which one is which. Okay, and then those flowers are excellent. The leaves and the flowers of the mullein plant are very, very good. And you want to, if you're going to harvest them, you want to harvest the leaves after the dew has dried to mitigate mold growth on them. So wait until there's no dew on it. And it's best to harvest the leaves also when the plant has a stalk and the flowers are blooming. That's the highest time of medicinal value. And you can use the leaves and the flowers fresh or dried. Okay, so you can find these things and harvest them and take them home and dry them, and then contain them and use them during the times when they are not harvestable. So dry that yourself and you'll save yourself a lot of money from ordering them online or going to your health food store if you can do that yourself. Okay, so the next one is plantain. Now plantain, let me see, done with that one. Plantain is also another excellent one that, as you can see, does all kinds of things. And once you learn how to identify, you're going to see it all over the place here in the grass. I have been seeing it all week long. You've got lots of broadleaf plantain in the lawns here. So the most common is broadleaf and narrowleaf. Narrowleaf you might see out more in the woods and such. In lawns, I tend to see the broadleaf one. But psyllium seeds, actually, remember I thickened the charcoal poultice yesterday with the psyllium husk powder? So psyllium seeds are taken from the plantain plant. Not the broadleaf or the narrowleaf, but the Plantago ovata is where the psyllium seeds and husks most commonly come from. And plantain can be harvested anytime, and it is best used fresh. You can use it dried, but it's even better to use it fresh. And it's great that it's so prolific. You can find it pretty much year-round. So that is a good thing. So the external uses for plantain is that it is anti-inflammatory, it is an astringent, it's good for burns, hemorrhoids, itching from oral mucositis, and that's often a side effect for cancer patients that have had chemotherapy and radiation on anywhere on the face or neck area, as it affects the mucous membranes. It's good for pain and or itching from insect bites and stings, for poison ivy, poison oak, for rashes, snake bites, sores, swollen lymph glands, toothaches, wounds. Have you noticed how all of these are good for wounds? And most of them for skin conditions too, different kind of skin stuff going on. So again, plantain is another medicinal plant that just looks like a common weed that people try to get rid of a lot. But as I said, once you know what it is, then you'll want to keep it and utilize it. So the poisonous look-alike, well, before I get to that, you can do what's called a camper's poultice with plantain, and that's there on your handout. And that simply, you don't have anything and you're out in the woods and you've got one of these things going on. If you find plantain, you can just chew some of the leaves up, make sure they're, as clean as they can be, and chew them up a few times to where they're releasing their juices, and then take that and put it on your wound or whatever issue is going on, your rash, and then secure it there with a bandana or something that's just gonna hold it on you. And that makes a quick camper's poultice with the plantain. If you can also do it by crushing in a mortar and pestle to get it to release its juices, because that's a medicinal part of it. You want to break it up and crush it so that it's releasing that, and then put it straight on that affected area and wrap it onto you. But the poisonous look-alike is that some lilies are poisonous, not all lilies, but some are poisonous, and some of those poisonous ones have leaves that look similar to the plantain leaves. So I don't have pictures particularly of those lilies, I just have pictures of the plantain, and I'm going to show you how to identify a plantain leaf. So this is the broadleaf plantain. When it's young, when it's mature, it has its seed pods, and then there on the far right is all parts of it. And again, these pictures are up here if you want to see those closer. But when it's small, it doesn't have the seed pods yet, and this is what is all over this campus in the grass. You'll see it now, I'm quite sure. So the identifying factor for plantain is that you see the lines in the leaf. So each one of those lines, let's say this is the leaf, here's the base and here's the tip. Each one of those lines starts at the base and goes up to the edge. Instead of a lot of plants have that center vein and then side veins going off of it, right? But plantain doesn't have that. It's one long vein clear from the base to the edge of the leaf, okay? And the broadleaf and the narrow leaf have that same identifying factor, okay? And then when they get their seed pods, it's very obvious. The broadleaf one has a quite tall seed pod there. You can see in the middle picture. And most of that stem is covered with the seeds. And actually those are edible. They're very fibrous, right? Because remember, psyllium comes from this type of plant, the family. And I've heard of I haven't tried it myself, I've heard of other people, they just will eat it raw, or some people have roasted those seed pods and then they say it tastes kind of like popcorn. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, I want to try that sometime, actually. But plantain is useful externally, but it can also be used internally as well. But we're just talking about external things here today. So, I don't know, can you see well enough on the pictures to see those lines in the leaves and tell how that it has just that one vein? Well, it has several, but it's a solid vein going up from the base to the edges. The narrow leaf plantain is the same way. So there on the left is the young, then the middle is the mature with its seed pods, and then all parts of that. So you can see the seed pod's a little different on the narrow leaf than it is the broadleaf, and it's a tall stalk, but it just has a little seed pod at the tip of it, rather than the broadleaf having seeds all the way up that stalk, okay? So, but it's easy, I mean, it's very easily identified by the leaf. Narrow leaf plantain is much more narrow than the broadleaf. Imagine that. I wonder why they called it that. So that is how to identify plantain leaves. So if you are, if you just can't quite tell between that and thinking it might be a poisonous lily, then just wait for the flower to appear or the seed pods, and you'll know which one. If a lily blooms, well, obviously that's a lily, right? Plantain doesn't necessarily, it does technically have flowers, but they're teeny tiny itsy bitsy ones. You don't ever look at a plantain and say, wow, look at those flowers on it. It's the leaves and the seed pods is what you notice. The flowers are so very small. And so basically, it is the leaves and seed pods, okay? So, yarrow, this is the fifth one, and then we're gonna go on talking about how to do the poultices, baths, and salves. So yarrow is another amazing herb that does all kinds of wonderful things, and that is harvested best when it's young in the spring or early summer. And you can harvest the leaves, the stems, and the flowers, so the whole plant. And it can be used fresh or dried. This is another one where you can do the camper's poultice, and if you find yarrow, you can chew up the leaves and then put it directly on a wound or some such thing, and that will be excellent. It's very good for wounds. So it is good for all these other things as well. So abscesses, it's an antispasmodic, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory. It has mild asthma, or good for mild asthma or bronchitis when you use it as a steam inhalation. And that, if you were here for the hydro lecture, that's simply bringing some water to a boil, and then you can put some yarrow in there and just breathe that in. Even if you put a towel over your head, it'll help even more. And that's a steam inhalation. It's also good for bleeding. It helps to stop bleeding. And cayenne pepper is also another one that helps to stop bleeding. I actually had one time where I was doing the poultice lecture, and I actually chopped up the onions for that demonstration. And I had done this many times, and I had never cut any of my fingers. And this one time at work, giving this lecture, I'm chopping onions, and whew, I almost cut off the whole tip of my thumb. Well, I'm in the middle of giving a lecture. I didn't have Band-Aids with me or anything, so I would just ask someone, can you go get to the nurse's station and get a Band-Aid for me? And so they run off, and part of one of my poultices I was going to talk about was cayenne pepper. And so I had a shaker jar of it there on the table. So while they were going to get the Band-Aid, I just grabbed the cayenne pepper and dumped that all over my thumb, and I just kept doing my demonstration and talking, and then they came and got me a Band-Aid. I stuck it on there and wrapped it around and just kept going with my lecture. And I tell you what, and when I took that off afterwards and cleaned it, I didn't try to get all the cayenne pepper off of it. I left it crusted on there for a bit. That wound has, of all the wounds I've ever had, that had healed the best and the fastest. But the purpose was for stopping the bleeding, and it did. So just threw that in as a freebie there for you. All right. Not part of this lecture, but anyways. Where was I? Stopping bleeding. And it's also good for boils, for bruises, another one for boils, right? And bruises. Burns, eczema, hay fever, again doing it as a steam inhalation. For hemorrhoids, we had another one that was good for hemorrhoids. Hives, joint inflammation, mastitis, poison ivy, sores, sprains, swelling, and wounds. All 5 of these are good for wounds. So yarrow is one of the excellent ones. I've heard one, prepper type person who, she's like, if you can't take anything else with you, herbal wise, take yarrow. If you're going to be out camping or hiking or something, because it's just so good and effective. Now, the thing about this one is its poisonous look-like is deadly. So you have to identify yarrow by your eyes only. No touching allowed, okay? You do not touch that plant until you know for certain that it is yarrow. All right, and we're gonna get into that. But you can also use yarrow powder and mix it with water into a paste, and then use that on your skin for things as well, or you can use the fresh or dried. So, the poisonous look-like for yarrow, does anyone know? Hemlock. Yes, it is hemlock. So, can you tell by the flowers which one is which? There are a little bit of differences flower-wise between the hemlocks and the yarrow, but the flowers are so close that I recommend that you do not identify by the flowers, okay? Identify by the leaves and the stems. So we're going to go over that. So these are the flowers of all three. There you can see the yarrow on the left, and water hemlock in the middle, and poison hemlock. Water hemlock is actually the most poisonous. It's even more poisonous than poison hemlock, which I don't wonder why they switch those names. But anyways, water hemlock is one of the most toxic and deadly plants in the whole US. And so it's even to just touch it. And especially the roots, but the whole plant. And the whole plant of the poison hemlock is deadly and toxic to touch. Roots, stems, leaves, flowers, any part of it. So that's why I say these are plants that you have to identify just visually and not touching it. And if you find that you have hemlock as an invasive plant on part of your property or something, you do want to get rid of it, but you do not burn it. Because if the compounds in those plants get into the air, you're going to breathe them in, and it'll be toxic to you. It could kill you. So, okay, it's invasive. So, all right, so all the more important to know how to identify it, right? So we're going to talk about how to do just that. So the leaves, thank God he made the leaves very different from each other. And so yarrow leaves, they're on the left, they're very fine and like feathery and frilly type. And actually in the picture it can look like they're bigger, but they're very small. They're very small. They're not very long and very fine. And the leaves of the water hemlock is very different. They have sharp, jagged edges. They're very distinctly toothed. And they have a vein that goes out from the center stem to in between each one of those teeth, okay? Can you see that on there? So it's very toothed. So again, it's gonna bite you. Those teeth are gonna bite you. The poison hemlock has a fern-like leaf. So it has a center stem, and then it has these ferns coming off the side of it, which then has their own stem with little fern leaves coming off of that, okay? So those are the leaves, and so you can identify it by just that, but it's even more identifiable or more certainly identifiable by the stems. So the stem of the yarrow is round, and it has little lines in it, but it's solid green. There's no other color. It's all green, it's round, and it has very fine hairs all over it, okay? The water hemlock doesn't have many hairs at all. It might have a few hairs down at the base or something, but it is, excuse me. Is that me? doing something? Okay. I don't know. All right, maybe they're getting too close. I don't know. Sorry about that. So I was at the water hemlock. So those stems will be hollow towards the bottom, but again, you don't want to be finding that out by touching them, right? You can tell because they will have a reddish purple color and it's solid. There might be some green on the stem, but they'll also have some reddish purple coloration on it. And that is water hemlock. Whereas the poison hemlock will have discoloration, but it's in splotches. And you see those, it's like, it kind of looks like blood was sprinkled on the stem. And because of that, it got the nickname Socrates' blood. Has anyone ever heard the story of that? Okay, someone's heard that story. Well, Socrates was, yes, he was appointed to be executed and put to death. And so he was given his choice of how he wanted to die. And he chose to die by drinking poison hemlock tea. And so they've nicknamed that Socrates' blood because it looks like sprinkled blood on the stem. So that may or may not be on the whole stem, but if you see that on any part of it, you will know that that is poison hemlock. And again, for the water hemlock, it's not spackled, it is solid. And the poison hemlock stem is also completely hollow and has no hair. No hair. So one thing, Queen Anne's lace. You also have a Queen Anne's lace here, and that's also known as wild carrot. But Queen Anne's lace, its leaves can look a lot like similar to poison hemlock leaves. Not exactly, but more similar to it. And so the way you can also tell if it is Queen Anne's lace, I don't have a picture on here, but Queen Anne's lace it's very hairy, and they're not as fine as the yarrow. They're stiffer hairs that stick out. And a way to remember that is the queen has hairy legs. I heard that from someone. I have never forgotten it since. And it has come in good use, because there's been times where I saw a plant and I wasn't sure which one it was, and then I saw the hairs on it and it wasn't yarrow, and it was like, okay, the queen has hairy legs, it's Queen Anne's lace. But just about a month ago, my husband and I were babysitting a couple of young girls, and we took them to the river. And we were going to stop at this one spot, and he was going to do some fishing while the rest of us just played around. And so I went over and I was setting stuff down, and I noticed a plant. And I'm like, huh, you know, that looks really familiar. So I looked at it more closely, and I'm like, that's poison hemlock. Because I could identify it by the stem and the leaves. And it had those splotches on it and the leaf, and I was like, and so I went and I told my husband, I'm like, that's a big bush area right there of poison hemlock. So we picked up our stuff and we went somewhere else where the girls weren't going to be accidentally getting into it and touching it. And so, you know, just a day at the river, you might want to know this stuff, okay? Even if you don't use yarrow medicinally. So that is one plant that I do highly recommend that you familiarize yourself with if you want to be harvesting yarrow, that you know how to identify it from any of the hemlocks, okay? Very important. And again, I added a little extra identification resources there for you on your handouts, so that you can see more visuals. Okay, so how do we then use these herbs? And you can also use other herbs as well. It doesn't have to be just these 5. But how do you make an herbal poultice, an herbal bath, or an herbal salve? So that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this time. And wow, I don't think you can read that very well, can you? Well, at least it's on your handout, and people that are watching it can pause their screens and maybe take a screenshot of it. It looked more readable when I created it, so my apologies for that. All right, so if any of you were here for the poultice lecture yesterday, you're going to recognize some similarities on how you make an herbal poultice. So here I have comfrey, because I love comfrey. So I brought some with me, and we're going to make a comfrey poultice. So what I'm going to do is I've got just a glass bowl here, and I'm going to just dump some of this in here. Now, herbal poultices, you do use a little bit more because you want to kind of mound the poultice up. So it can be pretty thick. And so here, this is just dried leaf. On there. And here I warmed up some water, so it should still be hot. And I'm going to add some hot water in here to just simply start helping extract those medicinal properties of the comfrey. Okay, so yeah, it's just like making tea, but a whole lot stronger. All right, so the hot water is simply to help start pulling the properties of the comfrey out. And once you've got that, you're sure that all of that has been immersed and it's wet, then you leave that to set for a few minutes. And while that's setting and soaking, you can prepare the rest of your poultice. So we're going to get our piece of paper towel or cloth if you want to use that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my folded plastic wrap down first and then put my paper towel over it. So if you weren't here yesterday, I talk about folding your plastic wrap so that it makes it more manageable. And once it's folded, you can work with it a lot more easily, okay? So I'm going to fold it down. Let's see, I might make a poultice. I want it to be about 1 inch or 2 bigger on all 4 edges than the poultice that I make. So I'm going to make a poultice that's going to be there in the center, that type of size, all right? So I've got that ready. Then I'm going to put my paper towel over that. And let's say that this has set for 5 minutes. The water's nice and green. I don't pour a whole bunch of water in there because I'm not trying to make tea. I'm just trying to activate, I guess would be a good word, to activate those properties there in the comfrey. And so then I'm going to squeeze that water out and hope the spoon doesn't break. Okay, and put that in the middle. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did yesterday in folding all 4 edges of the paper towel. Okay, I'm going to call that good enough. Get that out of my way. So you can see I have it kind of piled high a bit. It's pretty thick. I don't know, can you see that? Okay. And we're just going to fold that over. Is there anyone here that would like this applied to you?
Yes, on my arthritis thumb.
Okay. Do you want to come up and I can put it on? So it's nice and wet there. And since the water has been sitting there, it is warm, but it's not hot, okay? So I've got that, and I've got the plastic that is well beyond each of the borders, and I'm gonna get one of these ace wraps ready. So you've got what going on?
Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even bend
You've got some good inflammation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. It won't bend.
So this is a little bit big for a thumb issue, but hey, the more the merrier. Mm-hmm. So I am going to kind of bind up your whole hand.
Okay.
With this.
I'll let you.
And we're just going to get that around there, mm-hmm. and secure this, mm-hmm. in exactly the same way. I want it snug but not uncomfortably tight. I don't want it restricting circulation or anything like that. Mm-hmm. You're going to look like you have a boxing glove on your hand here pretty soon.
How long would you keep it on?
You can keep it on the rest of the day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can.
I'm going to.
Yes.
Jenny, you're going to have to help me.
Is that a comfortable snug?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're just going to secure that, and I hope I don't poke you with these little teeth. Mm-hmm. And you know, I thought of it after the fact yesterday, and I kicked myself. I just had told you guys that the most important part of any treatment is to pray and ask God's blessing over it, and then I didn't pray when I applied those yesterday. So do you mind if I pray?
Yes, please do.
Okay, let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for comfrey and the blessing of these medicinal herbs. I ask that you would bless this poultice for this lady and her thumb, and that you would work through it to bring her relief and healing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so that is an herbal poultice, okay? Very easy to do. You can also do it with powders, like I mentioned, just by adding water. It doesn't have to be hot if it's a powder. Just add water to make a paste, put that on there, cover it, wrap it up, and you're gonna wear that for a good while. Now, a way to make it with fresh herb is what is on page 2. For making the comfrey poultice, I made it with the dried herb. I wanted to show you that way because that's easier than having a blender up here and trying to make it with fresh. But that's simply by putting, cleaning the fresh leaves of comfrey or whatever herb you're using, putting it in a blender. If it's not wet enough to just blend up on its own, then just add a tiny bit of water, enough to make it blend, because you're not wanting to make it super watery, okay? You just want to blend it up. And then you're going to get your cloth and pour that mixture on the center of the cloth, fold it up, and apply it just the same way. And you can make up a whole batch of it and make a bunch of them, different sizes, and put them on a cookie sheet and freeze them. And then once they're frozen solid, put them in a Ziploc freezer bag and have them pre-made and ready to just pull out of the freezer as needed. Okay, so that's a nice, easy way if you want to just harvest all at once and dirty up your blender and everything all at once. You can do that and not have to keep doing it over and over if you're going to need to use several poultices. So yeah, so you can wear that several hours, or you can even wear it overnight. So if you want to sleep with it, go right ahead. Just no boxing, okay? All right. So all of those instructions for making it from fresh herb is there on page 2. So an herbal baths are excellent. Is that going to go forward? There we go. The next, okay. So the instruction is also written on your handout, page 6. Herbal baths are super simple to do. So you want to take at least 2 quart jars, fill them with hot water and your herb, and infuse it. You're going to make a strong tea, basically. And put the herb and the hot water in there, cover it, and let it set for a minimum of half an hour. Or it can infuse even up to 2 to 3 hours if you want to make it even stronger. If you can plan that far ahead, that you know you're going to be taking an herbal bath, then you can have it setting there. If you only have it set for half an hour, then the jar is still going to be hot. So you are going to want to be mindful to protect your hands, have oven mitts or something on before handling the jar. But once that strong tea or infusion is ready and you want to start your bath, you then simply can get a strainer and take that and pour that strong tea into your tub, your bath water. Or if you don't want to have to do that straining process, then what you can do is put your herb inside a little muslin bag like this, and then, I would fill the whole bag. That's how much herb I would put. And then you put that in your hot water and let it infuse. And then when it's ready, you just simply take that out and pour your infused water in the tub, okay? And I personally would even just throw that in the tub, and I'd be squeezing it and get most of that out of there that you can. And have it floating in the water with you while you're soaking in the tub. That's perfectly fine as well. So, what's that?
It's still steeping.
It's still steeping, that's exactly right. So, super easy to do an herbal bath. Just make a strong herbal tea. And like I said, you can do at least 2 quarts because, a tub, that's a lot of water. You want to make it pretty strong. If you don't want it, depending on what herb you use, it could add a bit of a stain to your tub, just like I talked about with charcoal, if you have a porous tub material. So do be mindful of that if that's an issue for you, or if you have a tub that will stain. You can also add other optional herbs that smell good to make it a little more pleasant, because things like comfrey, it's not that they smell bad, but they just smell earthy. And some people might like to add lavender or peppermint or some eucalyptus, some aromatic herb in with it, so it steeps with it and it makes it smell good. And those other things as well have therapeutic effects also. So that's an option that you can add. And you can also add Epsom salt to the bath if you want to add a relaxing aspect to it, more relaxing than the hot water, because Epsom salt is very calming. It's the magnesium sulfate. It's another way. Who doesn't know about Epsom salt baths these days, right? Most people know that you can do an Epsom salt bath. So you want to soak in an herbal bath for at least 15 to 30 minutes, okay? So just lay there and enjoy. Enjoy those herbs. So that is an herbal bath. Now, an herbal salve. Now this does take more work. Does anyone here make herbal salves? Salves.
I have a question before we go to the steps. After you do the bath, do you need to shower or you don't shower?
After you take an herbal bath, do you shower or do you not shower? You don't have to. It's personal preference, really, if you want to leave that on the skin or not. So, yes. I didn't see any hands go up for making herbal salves. Anyone? Okay. A couple people over here. Yeah, so it is a little bit of work, but it is well worth it. You can make salve much more cheaply for yourself than it is to buy it. And you can use it as making gifts for people. People love it, and it makes a very nice gift for them. Like I said, this is what I made when I worked at the Lifestyle Center, and we would sell it to the guests that wanted some. I made comfrey salve specifically because it was just so useful for so many things. And I had another lady telling me here a couple days ago that she makes it comfrey salve and sells it to ladies with arthritis. And they love it, and it's what keeps their arthritis manageable. And so herbal salve, let's see if this will go forward. Come on, there we go. All right, there's two slides for the salve instructions, but it's on your handout there. So what you want to do first is infuse oil with the herb, okay? And there's different methods for doing this. You can do it a fast way in a crock pot on low for several hours to infuse the properties of the herb into the oil, or you can do it the slow method. That's actually what I do. I do the slow method. It's called cold infusion. Doesn't necessarily mean cold. You can set it in a warm room, or you can set it in a brown paper bag in the sun, and that gradual heat will slowly infuse the herb into the oil. So I like to use extra virgin olive oil, but you can also use almond oil or jojoba oil, any of those things. I've heard of some people making it with castor oil. I wouldn't necessarily make salve with castor oil because you don't want to be heating castor oil. Once you have the infused oil, you then have to melt some beeswax and then put the oil into it. So the oil does get some heat at that point. And castor oil properties can be damaged if they're heated like that. So I use extra virgin olive oil. For comfrey, I fill a quart jar about halfway full of the dried leaf. Halfway is approximate. So the more dense the herb, the less you use. The lighter the herb, the more you use. Okay? So arnica, for example, is very light. So I would fill the whole jar with it. But comfrey is just kind of a typical dried leaf density. So I fill that halfway, and then you're going to completely fill that jar with the oil. And have a knife that once you have filled it, maybe about there with the oil, you stop and you stir it, and make sure that the oil has gotten all into the herb and it's totally coated and covered, okay? And you don't have any air pockets or anything. And then you might get some bubbles coming up, and that level of oil will go down a bit. And then once you know that that's thoroughly stirred and covered, then you finish filling the jar all the way up to about an inch from the top with the oil, and stir that again. And then you're going to put your lid on, and that's going to set for 6 to 8 weeks. But you're shaking it once a day, okay? If you have a metal lid, I do recommend that you put a piece of parchment paper on it first and then put the lid on so that the oil is not touching the metal. As I use plastic lids. And you're just going to, every day, set that in a warm room or on a shelf or something, indirect light, or if it's in direct light, I put it in a paper bag or something. And just once a day, shake that whole thing up, and then let it set for another 24 hours. The next day, just shake it. You only have to do it once a day. So what I did was I always set it in a place that I walked by every day. So that way when I've got 10 minutes, 2 minutes. All right, we're gonna speed up here. Thank you for getting my attention. That way when I would walk by, I would see it, because if it was set in a cupboard or somewhere, I would forget about it. So once you've got that 6 to 8 weeks, all that is infused into the oil. Then what you're gonna do is to strain that out. And my favorite way to do that is with a French press. If you have a French press, you just dump that in there and then push that screen down and pour that oil into a bowl or another clean jar, okay? If you don't have a French press, then you're simply going to, I don't have it here with me, but you're going to have a bowl, and then in that bowl you set a sieve or a fine mesh screen, and then you put cheesecloth over that, and you dump the herb and oil into the cheesecloth, gather up all the edges, and just squeeze the oil out of it. And it's straining through the sieve, so that once you're done with that, what's left in your bowl is just the infused oil, okay? When you have just your infused oil, then you throw the herb away. because all of its medicinal properties are now in the oil and not the herb. Once you're done with that, you're ready to make salve. And just real quick, I'm gonna try to condense this. Have a pot with boiling water, get a cup, either 1 or 2 cup measurement, and set that in the boiling water. And you're going to put, for 1 cup of oil, you're gonna put 1 ounce of beeswax. I like to get the little pellets or shavings because they melt faster, and I don't have to cut it. Beeswax is very hard to cut. If you've ever tried it, ask me how I know. Melt that beeswax, then get your jar of infused oil. Once that beeswax is melted, pour that in until it's up to the 1 cup. And the beeswax will harden a little bit again, and you just keep that in there until it's completely clear and melted. And then you take that, of course, protect your hands with mitts, but I'm not gonna. You have sterilized glass jars or tins, and once that is all clear and melted, you pour that into your containers and let it completely cool. You keep the lids off for about 24 hours for a 4-ounce jar size. The smaller it is, the shorter, the bigger the jar, the longer. It has to be completely cool so that it's not holding moisture in there and causing it to go bad more quickly. Okay, you don't want any moisture. So you can set it in the refrigerator if you want it to go faster. But once that has been completely cooled, you can then put the lids on and you label that, what it is, and the date that you made it, because that will be good for 1 to 2 years, okay? And if it's refrigerated, especially, it will last more closer to that 2-year mark. But it doesn't have to be refrigerated. The beeswax thickens it up. And beeswax is also very good for the skin as well. So it's something where you can add essential oils to it if you want to. If you did that, you would do it right at the very end when it's ready to pour, okay? So that's a quick overview on how to make a salve, but it's a lot of fun. And beeswax, to get it off of your utensils, you can either have dedicated utensils for your beeswax, things that are going to be touching your beeswax, or to clean it off, you just simply boil a pot of water and then use that boiling water to melt the beeswax off of your kitchen utensils, okay? Doing it carefully. So, I think that was, that's the rest of the instructions there. So if you didn't catch all of that or don't remember all of it, you can read it there on your handout or take screenshots if you're watching online and have those instructions. So that is herbal baths, salves, and poultices. So, and that can be with any other herb as well. Thank you so much. I can take questions. If you have questions, just come on up, but I have to close things out. And we're going to close with a word of prayer, all right? Our precious Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day, for your blessing. And we thank you for giving us a pharmacy in these herbs and things that look like weeds growing out there that have medicinal properties that can be such a blessing to us. I pray that you would help each one to be able to utilize or share this information and just be able to bless others and bless their families, their children, their parents, their siblings, their cousins, aunts, uncles, nephews. Lord, you've given us these things, and we ask that you would increase our knowledge of them, and may we use it wisely. Be with us in the rest of this day, in this camp meeting. Thank you for being with us throughout this week, Lord, and the times that we have had together. I pray that your blessing would be upon each family represented here. In Jesus' name, amen.